Hey guys, welcome to episode 1 of our mixed media miniseries. Today, we're going to talk about an introduction to what mixed media is and all of the different things that you can do with it. So Wikipedia will tell you that in visual art, mixed media is an artwork in which more than one medium or material has been employed. So assemblages and collages are two common examples of art using different media that will make use of different materials, including cloth, paper, wood, and found objects. And the list doesn't stop there. You're not limited in using mixed media, and that's kind of the beauty of it. So mixed media is about freedom. It's really about being able to explore all of these different things. And so we're going to start with today is we're going to look at a bunch of different examples, and I'm going to talk about, how things kind of fit together and the ways in which collage can be utilized to get a bunch of different effects and combine different materials. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about collage, and this is something that I spoke about in my live session for the mandalas, the mixed media mandalas, because I thought that it was a really important kind of tool. Like a collage for analog mixed media is a really important tool because the idea of cut and paste is something that we can do with a lot of different materials. It's we can do it with paper, we can do it with fabric, you can do it digitally, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And so this article by My Modern Met, written by Kelly Richmond Abdu, is a really great kind of introduction. I didn't really find a whole lot on the introduction to the history of collage art, but this article kind of summarizes a lot of it really nicely. Says that collage was coined by Cubist artists Georges Braque and Pablo Picasso, and the term quote-unquote collage comes from the French word coller, which translates to glue. She talks a little bit about the history of some of the associated movements like Cubism, which involved kind of cutting up and rearranging objects in different perspectives, and Dada. If you're interested, there's some really great Wikipedia pages on both of those movements. Actually, and most things that you're curious about will have really awesome resources on Wikipedia that you can look through, and they'll often hyperlink you to other really interesting ideas. So Wikipedia is a great resource to explore. She also mentions Surrealism, which a lot of these movements, Dadaism and Surrealism, kind of have these crossovers of absurdist kind of leanings where they're using things that are strange or nonsensical to kind of provoke thought. Yeah, so this was a really interesting article that I would definitely recommend checking out if you're interested in the history of collage and those kind of movements that are tied to it. There's a great Wikipedia page on collage, and it will kind of give you a list of things that are used in collage: found objects, newspaper clippings, ribbons, paint. And as you can see in the table of contents, there's a decent amount of ideas to explore here. Something else I wanted to mention for collage as a point of reference historically was this thing called The Paper Garden. It's a book that was written by Molly Peacock, but it's about this lady named Mary Delaney who she lived in the 18th century and had kind of a sad, aristocratic life, and then in her 70s kind of came into contact with collage. She realized that she had red paper and it looked like a flower petal, so she started creating these botanical collages that there's now a huge collection. Yeah, so it seems like there's a collection of her work at the British Museum, and so they called it paper mosaics at the time, and her botanical drawings were very detailed. So if you're interested in her work, there's an entire book written about it, and you can check out her works online, as you can see here. Yeah. Other times that collage have been used are in instances like The Commissar Vanishes, which is is politically controversial because it talks about Stalin's Russia and the Soviet Union kind of doctoring photographs and falsifying history. So that's a really interesting book if you ever get a chance to check it out. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is Instagram as a resource. So Instagram as a resource is an amazing, living, breathing community of artists, and they are often happy to share their techniques. So I follow quite a few artists, and I will ask them online, hey, how do you do this? And 99% of the time, they actually do get back to you, and they do respond. So if you have access to Instagram, it can be a really great resource if you follow the right hashtags, if you know what to search. So I follow some hashtags, I follow a hashtag mixed media, or I follow a hashtag collage, or a hashtag digital collage, and I get a lot of really interesting content from that. So as you can see, I'm scrolling through here, and we're going to be talking about all of these different pieces. I'm going to go through them one at a time, and I'm going to kind of talk to you about the ways in which that image was likely constructed, just because in my experience, I've done a little bit of painting, I've done a little bit of sculpture and drawing, and, and printmaking. Printmaking is a really an amazing thing that we're only going to really briefly touch on because it kind of requires a little bit more materials than the traditional, more traditional things like collage. So, but we're going to talk about all of these different things that you see. So this is my Instagram collections. When you're viewing them on the computer, you can't look at your different albums. Like on the phone, I have a collage album, I have like a printmaking album, I have a ceramics album. But on the computer, it kind of only shows it to you as like one big feed, so to speak. So these are all the different things that I've saved for you guys to talk about. With you. So we're going to start with this one because I think that cardboard is probably one of the best materials that we can be working with. And we don't really think about that in our day-to-day because we see it so often and we throw it away. But corrugated cardboard specifically, and you can actually see here in the bottom right-hand corner, this is corrugated cardboard. So corrugated cardboard is cardboard that has been reinforced with those little zigzags between it. So you have like a sheet of brown cardboard, the little zigzags, and then another sheet of cardboard, and it essentially reinforces the material and makes it like much thicker. You can get some really good quality corrugated cardboard if you just like kind of keep an eye out. Amazon boxes are a really great resource for that. You can cut them up. And the other advantage to cardboard is that like this artist has used the cardboard just as like a ready to hang shadow box kind of piece. Like it's already a framed piece. You can see that it says fresh blueberries on the side, so they've repurposed blueberry boxes. And if you actually read the description, so this is from High Fructose magazine, it says charcoal drawings with gold leaf on cardboard fruit boxes by Narciso Martinez. Use what you've got. And this is a really great example of like how we can use things around us that are completely free. Like people throw away cardboard. So this is a really amazing resource that we can use to our advantage. And gold leaf is a really amazing tool. In this cardboard box, like they would have painted the glue all around. Okay, so it's a specific type of glue called adhesive size. Size, and it's specifically for metal leaf. So this artist clearly painted around the outline of their figures, of their charcoal drawings, and then they would have added the gold leaf on top. And it's taken really well to the cardboard. In fact, you can actually see the texture of the cardboard underneath the gold leaf. So next one we're going to talk about is this one. Looks like it was made on a book. Layered collage and string on book as a substrate. So she said the book as substrate means that she's using the book as like a canvas or as like the surface that she's gluing and collaging onto. They have some string or some thread in there, some glue, what looks like some watercolor paint, and a bunch of different types of paper that have been kind of like layered and built up. I think what's really interesting is that you can kind of pick up anything in your surroundings and kind of repurpose it for artwork. This is another example where this artist is using gold ink. Like they are using like watercolor, and so the technique that they're using here is called wet on wet. So they've probably wet that circle beforehand, and then when they bring in their other brush and colors, it just kind of bleeds. That's what you call when it kind of melts into the other colors. You kind of let it bleed into the other colors. And so after that's dry, then the artist has gone back with their calligraphy quill, and they're using gold ink they're just dipping a little bit in watered down gold ink to create their hills. Really important to make sure that you let your watercolor dry before you go and try and put stuff on top of it, because if you don't, it will not work. It will bleed together. So this was, I think, a really beautiful piece it says Messy Ever After in Oceanside, California. So, and these inks, stuff like this, you could probably go on Amazon and find, let's say gold ink. So there's definitely stuff that you can find online. Gold ink. There's probably multi-gold ink palette, maybe. Knowing the right keywords is really important when you're searching for things. So see something like that's actually makeup. So art. Gold metallic paint. I think we're kind of getting back to gold ink here, but just so you guys are aware, if there's something that you're interested in trying out, I personally really like gold ink. I find gold ink is a little bit easier to work with than gold leaf. So if you have it, if you have the option, or if you're interested in checking it out, I would personally recommend the ink to start, because it's something that you can just use exactly like paint. So gold leaf, you need the size as well. So you would need, you know, however many sheets. Wow, that's a great deal. 100 sheets for $10. And then you also need this adhesive size, the Mona Lisa adhesive size. This is the stuff that I've seen. And it's really amazing, actually. I've personally never gotten my gold leaf to look as good as this picture here, but not to say that you can't do it. I'm just saying, like, that's kind of why I would encourage you guys, if you're interested, to explore the inks before you explore the gold leaf itself. So this is printmaking, and it's made with a jelly art pad. And so a jelly art pad is essentially like this clear pad here that we're going to have a look at later. But it's something that I just got and I haven't even explored yet. I just want you guys to know that printmaking and layering, like, you can achieve some really interesting visual results with printmaking. And specifically, like, this is a form of monotype printing. Monotype just means, mono is the Latin prefix for one. So monotype just means you get like one print from it. But I just want you guys to know that this is totally something that in future, if you ever get a chance to explore, there's so much potential for printmaking and layering. And I find that with printmaking, you can achieve effects that you can't really achieve without printmaking, you know? So I just wanted to share, printmaking with you guys, because I think that it's something that is like really cool. We actually have an artist locally, Eric Euler, who does printmaking, and monotype sessions through Artfix. So if you guys are around North Bay, and you're looking to do monotypes, I'm not going to guarantee that it's going to turn out exactly like this picture, because it's always an experiment, but we do have people locally, and there are classes that will be available to explore printmaking, and it's a really amazing technique. It's so much fun, I find. So I would really encourage you guys to check that out, just because it's a whole other medium that I feel like a lot of people aren't just casually exposed to in their day-to-day. So getting back to collage, so this is from our James Collage, mixed media 9x12 on 140-pound watercolor paper. You can really see the texture of that watercolor paper in the background. And I really like this because he's kind of working with the geometry of paper. You've got some ripped edges here. I personally really love ripped edges. And then he's also working in a color palette. So he's got a lot of like earth sepia kind of tones with the browns and the old paper look, and then he's working with blues and then a little kind of dash of red in there. So I really like the blues and the earth tones. He's got some kind of like, it's either like wax paper or really thin cardboard, and you can see that he's like cut and pasted and layered, and there's like some see-through aspects to it. So if your paper is really thin and you glue it down, you're going to be able to see what's underneath. Actually, this is a really good example. So he's got this like thin brown wax paper kind of cardboard stuff, and you can see the music, the music notes and the staff through the page. And he knows that. So even with this, like, you can see that he's really carefully used what appears to be an envelope. Like this bit here looks like the inside of one of those envelopes that is like, I want to say foolproof. That's kind of like thief proof, so you can't see through them. And he's kind of threaded through this like red striped paper so that it's kind of has a 3D effect, or it looks like it's kind of traveling from one side of the paper to the other. I really love a lot of the textures and colors that are going on here. And you can always draw on top of it. So I'm not sure if he's drawn this or if this is something that he's kind of pulled out of a magazine. You could make stuff from entirely found objects. Like, you don't need to like draw and paint on top of your collage, but just so you know, you can layer forever. So you could draw on top of this, and then if you didn't like it, you could collage and layer more paper and more cardboard on top. And I mean, it would build up over time, but paper's thin enough that you could build up 3 or 4 or 5 layers without it being too thick. So this type of stuff is actually among my favorites. You can really tell that they've layered quite a bit. They've done some like drawing with marker, pencil, crayon, and pencil down here. And then they've layered on top of this and kind of put thick texture. Yeah, so you can see that this artist has kind of layered it up. And like, not all collages have to be realistic things. So this is like a pretty abstract, pretty minimalist collage. He's got like a little tiny square of pink there as a pop of color, and some like what looks like finger painting red paint kind of seeping on. And he probably built up, you know, John Rollins, he probably built this up like quite a few times. This looks like it could be some cardboard up here. And yeah, you can just keep painting over it until you get something that you like. Yeah, he's used some streaks down here, maybe some black paint or some ink over here. So here is something that's like pretty minimalist. It's looks like we've taken a photograph of a collage that is pretty minimalist. So this is like something from a sketchbook that's been torn out. There's like a drawing. So if you do drawings and you want to incorporate your own drawings into it, that's something totally doable. They've used like a piece of red that they've torn and they've made like a little rose out of some other stuff. They've got some hatching in pen going on here. Hatching is the technique of when you do a bunch of lines one way and then you cross them and do a bunch of lines the other way, and it kind of gives you some shading and some texture. Yeah, and then down here we've got what looks like another piece of sketchbook stuff. So this person seems like they've collaged mostly with their own work, with sketches that they've done. So sketching and resting, Wilbert collage. Obviously, there's a lot of really great artists who are doing stuff with collage. This one is mixed media. Says Tom Butler Art. I love the composition in this piece, Big City Blues, a rooftop vista which celebrates the old and new of this much-loved city. Frame sign, limited edition, hand embellished. And so that means that this is a print, it looks like, but they've used it looks like it's a combination between painting and collage. And he says it's a limited edition print, so obviously he's making copies of this and he's signing them. There's an edition of 195. So in printmaking, if the less numbers there are, the lower the number of an edition in printmaking, the better. Or not the better, but like the more valuable it tends to become, because if there's only 10 and you have one of 10, that means, over time, eventually some of them are going to get lost, some of them are going to get ruined, and then you may have like one of the only ones in the world. So this is true for anything. Limited edition tends to become more valuable over time because there's less of them in the world. And it says that it comes with a certificate of authenticity, which is something that I'm going to be doing for my kintsugi and imaginary rings. Like Andrew from 3D Mind is going to sign off on the certificate of authenticity because it's something that really does hold value. It's not something that anybody could kind of replicate. Even the kintsugi rings, like I think it would be easy enough for somebody with a 3D printer to quote unquote replicate them, but they could never replicate our idea, our collaboration, where that came from, and the authenticity of what that collaboration represents for him and I, historically in our careers. So you can use collage in ways that are kind of surrealist. And so this is a really good example of like how somebody's identity is being obscured and then they've kind of replaced their face with flowers and roses. I really love this type of collage when you see this. There's this element of mystery, like that Magritte painting, Man with Apple, he talks about how it's just that element of mystery. Like people can't help but like, we want to know what the face looks like. We want to know what's behind the flowers. And I think that that's like really true for these types of collages. I'm always intrigued by them and I always just like want to see more. Yeah, so this is a page, Art Cures All, Chicago, Illinois. And there's a quote from Maya Angelou that says, quote, "Ask for what you want and be prepared to get it." So I really love the colors of this. They use lots of reds and kind of darks. Yeah, some beautiful floral kind of rainbow happening in the corner here. So this piece, I really love this. So this is kind of, I want to say expressionist almost. Expressionism is like what happens when you express yourself with art. So that might be throwing paint buckets, at a huge canvas. That could be considered expressionism because you're expressing yourself through the art. This looks like a pretty big piece. This is as Stephanie Apap. And it says the X file. So you've got this huge X and lots of texture, lots of busyness, lots of energy going on here. This type of stuff is really fun because you can paint and you can layer, and it does. I'm not entirely sure what it's on. It could be on a piece of wood. If it was on a piece of wood, you can get wood at Home Depot. You can get it cut to any size, and that's a pretty useful tool. Like wood panels are a really great material to work with. I find compared to canvas, I find that wood panels are like they're just easier to store. They're like tougher, so you can kind of like move them more easily. Like if a canvas gets slashed with like something, then they're kind of ruined, like patching a canvas is definitely challenging. But this board, like it's probably going to be sturdy if it is on wooden panel, and like it can last forever, and you can get pretty big panels for like relatively cheap compared to what you would get like a canvas for. The only thing with wooden panels, much like anything else, is that it warps. So unless you've braced the back of it, especially for a piece that's pretty big, it will over time kind of like start to curve because you've put paint on one side. And so like as the paint kind of adheres, it's kind of exerting like a tension on the surface, and it will change over time. Yeah. So here's another example of that mystery kind of happening with a purple color scheme this time. And again, this is from Art Cures All. So I love the look of like the person. And they've used, it looks like there's a specific type of paper. It's like a Japanese paper. There used to be this art shop in Guelph that I would visit, and they had like beautiful Japanese papers, and they're very thin, and a lot of the time they had like metallic decorations on them, and I loved it. Let's see, Japanese. Washi. So washi paper is like very thin, but you can get them in like all different colors and textures. And I got the stuff that was like beautiful and marbled. You'll see later on some examples of washi paper. I love this. Yeah, these are so beautiful. Yeah, I got this marbled paper. It was like $10 or something for a sheet of it, but I didn't even care because I knew I was gonna use it to make like envelopes, and I'll show you guys those later on when we talk a little bit more about collage and tape. Tape is a very useful tool. Yeah. So you can use markers in your sketchbook, and then so like this is a great example because once you've done this, you could take this and make it into anything. It could become a background, it could be part of a background, it could become like a shirt if you depending on what you cut it out as. So having a sketchbook and having like colors like markers and paints like watercolor stuff that you can play with in your sketchbook is really amazing, because even if you do a sketch and you're like, oh, I don't really super like this part of it, you can always cut it out and use it as part of a collage. This is an example of a collage where somebody has used like mostly fabrics and materials, or like pictures of fabrics and materials, and they've cut them out in like these strange shapes that kind of only happen with fabrics. So this is from Art Maze magazine, and it says this is a piece by Ambiguance, paper collage on illustration board. Illustration board is kind of like, illustration board is kind of like Bristol board. I personally really love illustration board. It's like really light illustration boards, different that they are sheets of drawing paper mounted to both sides of a heavyweight board to provide the stiffest surface yet. Our illustration boards, oh, this is from Strathmore. So Strathmore is a brand of like paper. It's like if you go to an art store, you'll see Strathmore often. But I really like it because it's like kind of thin, but again, like you can use cardboard as like a substitution for illustration board. You don't need to be buying stuff if you have, cardboard around. This is a great example of how collage has kind of been incorporated with sewing and textiles. So if you know how to sew, if you have a sewing machine, you could do this by hand. I think that this was done with a sewing machine just based on like the zigzags and like the tightness of the lines and stuff. And they've sewn on a piece of unprimed canvas. Like it looks like that they've cut this canvas, and then you can do that. Like you don't need to stretch canvas. You can get canvas at Fabricland. You can get canvas that's primed and unprimed. I'm pretty sure you can get primed canvas at Fabricland. But yeah, so this is something that, you don't have to use the material the way that, has historically and traditionally been done. Like you can really get experimental with mixed media. This is something that's used a lot of old newspapers, a lot of paint and old newspapers primarily. It says it's a second layer. This is the second layer of a work in progress from Dale Volker Fine Art, and it says it's 48 by 36, so that's 4 feet by 3 feet, so that's actually a pretty big work. Newspaper and paint on canvas, and you can collage onto canvas too. So if you guys have canvases already at home, you guys can pick up canvases at the dollar store if you're interested. You can use these as foundations, and then they're just kind of like ready to hang, which is really nice. This person has kind of painted on, it looks like that they've primed a little bit, like they've used a little bit of gesso or white paint to kind of paint over a table of contents, and then they've painted over top of that Mrs. Monk Studio. This is German. This is German happening in the background here. Watercolor Botanicals hashtag. And so all of these hashtags that you see, Watercolor Botanicals, Mixed Media, Daily Art, these are all, depending on how big these are, they'll have like a lot of amazing stuff. So let's go to Watercolor Botanicals for a second just to kind of check that out. So as hashtags, I think Instagram has been like really successful for seeing that. And you might find artists that you just really love their work on here. Or, alternatively, it might just be something that every once in a while you want to pop in, pop out, kind of check out what else is going on in the world. And what I really love about Instagram is that these are all artists who are currently practicing. Like a lot of artists use their Instagram very similarly to how I use my Instagram, which is like as a kind of an archive where it's like every time I make a piece, I can kind of look back. Sketchbooks, mixed media sketchbooks are some of my favorite works. And, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about that in future. But if you guys don't have a sketchbook and, you know, you kind of are inspired by stuff, you kind of you do poetry, you do whatever, like whether you're a writer or you're a drawer or whatever you are, or a musician, like I just think a sketchbook is a great thing to have to be able to write down ideas. This person has like a ring binder sketchbook. I'm personally not a fan of those, but it's not to say that you wouldn't be, because like you can take out your papers really easily, and that's something where it's like I always end up having to cut out pages for my sketchbook if I want to use them. So that might be something really great for you. This artist, like this is pretty advanced, but I just wanted to share this because I know that this artist, Carly Corneliusson, is a great mixed media artist. So it says, I used drawing, and I did a drawing I did of their house combined with some meaningful flowers and Australian birds. It says it's 60 by 60 centimeters. That's pretty big. It's acrylic, image transfer, and colored pencil on board. So image transfers can be done in a couple of different ways. The way that I've traditionally done image transfers has been with carbon transfer paper. And this is something that you can pick up at Staples. So carbon transfer paper, this is a great example of like how it works. So you have a drawing here. You would put your paper on top of the wood with this underneath of it. So you put your carbon paper black side face down, then you put your picture on top of it, you retrace your image, and then when you lift it, the carbon transfer will have transferred it onto the surface. And so this is another great example. So essentially carbon transfers work best with like line work because you're going to be having to retrace your image on it. So it says that if this person says that they did carbon transfers, they may have had either a sketch or a photograph of a bird, and then they would have just pulled like the line work that they thought was important, like probably in the wings, and then the outline and like, you know, the beak and the face. Same thing with the flowers, like, and for something like this, like if they have a picture of an illustration that they've done, you can trace flowers from the computer screen with tracing paper if you want, or you can trace them out of a book, and then you can transfer them onto like a new surface, like a painting or a skateboard or whatever. Yeah, so I just thought that this artist was like a really, really technically talented artist that I wanted to share with you guys, because it's just really amazing and inspiring to see work of this type of caliber, to show that, you know, you don't have to be stuck with just watercolor or with just ink, because I guarantee you that those that triangle pattern in the top left is not something that they, you know, could have achieved with painting, with just painting alone. They've probably done, you know, it says colored pencil. They've used colored pencil to kind of texture, to get some of these textures that you wouldn't really be able to do with just painting. Remember, you guys don't have to be making, you know, really detailed classical art paintings with your work. A lot of the time, it's just nice to have something quiet like this. This is a great example of a mixed media piece. It looks like it's on a board. Let's see. Let's go up here. It doesn't really say what it's made of. It says Ice Latte No. 2, available tomorrow. So I don't know how this was posted a week ago. I don't know if it's still available, but it looks like they've done some liquid painting here. So they've used like some white paint and some like kind of ice latte colored paint, and have kind of created this beautiful liquid artifact. And they've done some painting. Obviously they did this big streak first, and then they probably poured the paint over top and then kind of scribbled their pastel or whatever material this is. This looks like it would be chalk or oil pastel over top. And then you know what I mean, like this piece is beautiful in its own right. It's quiet. It's got this kind of fun messy effect with the ice latte swirls, but again, like this is a masterpiece in its own right, and it doesn't have to have like faces or people or houses or anything identifiable in it. This is a really cool page. You can see that this is taken out of somebody's sketchbook, and it's primarily ink. It looks like ink and maybe a little bit of charcoal. It says it's a commission of Larry David. You know, he's the guy from Curb Your Enthusiasm, Seinfeld. I think he wrote or created one or both of those things. But yeah, so this probably would have been done with like with a quill. So with oh yeah, you can see it right here. So this is the tool that they used. So this is a calligraphy pen. Calligraphy pens are like a really awesome source, and this is like done like a fountain pen. So this person doesn't need to be constantly, or maybe, I don't know, it looks like it's a fountain pen, so they wouldn't need to be constantly dipping their quill into ink. But you can get these really beautiful kind of effects. It reminds me of like Ralph Steadman. I don't know if you guys know who Ralph Steadman is. He's the guy who does the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas kind of artwork. But he uses lots of ink, lots of like splotchy, inky stuff, and you know, probably works with a quill himself. But this is a great image of Larry David. And then he also has included like a photograph here. And surprise, there's like a little bit of some beautiful handwriting on a paper that was used for a shirt. So this is a really cool mixed media piece, and it's mostly just, you know, paper on a sketchbook, but then you can add like little splashes of other things to kind of spice it up. So Lewis Ross Ignall, great work, South Portland, Maine. This is a cool example of just like a large scale painting where they probably would have started by doing their green background, and then once that was dried, then they would have gone back with like maybe a big brush or, you know, whatever else. It's 8 feet by 8 feet, so that's massive. Yeah, and then they would have done this pattern over top, probably by hand, I'd imagine. But this is just a cool example of like the ways that you can layer color, even if it all was just paint. This is kind of getting into three-dimensional stuff, but I just wanted to show you this because I thought it was really cool that like most of this looks like it was like drawn by hand, or if it was like a template that they printed out online and then they could have colored it and then put it together with tape. So this is something that can be really fun that we're going to kind of explore a little bit more of in our last video for three-dimensional or assemblage, you know, three-dimensional collage and assemblage. So this is kind of, we're getting almost more into scrapbooking here. I feel like there's lots of beautiful colors, lots of beautiful textures and papers going on. Scrapbooking has a really amazing wealth of resources for different textured papers and stuff like that. And you can see that they've used sewing, they've incorporated sewing and sewn together some of these kind of packages. And they have like inspirational quotes here. So it says, "No perfection here. Believe in your heart." Mindfulness. Like a lot of the stuff that I'm finding with collage art in particular is that there's a lot of inspirational quotes, and that's really nice because, you know, in our next video we're going to be talking about self-love mantras and what it means to kind of put those ideas in your space so that you can remember and be mindful of, you know, the things that you're filling your mind with. So I'm really looking forward to the next video to kind of talk to you guys a little bit more about this. But I wanted to share this because this is just a really beautiful way that they've used paper and textiles and like sewing. You can see that they've dyed some paper. So there's stuff that is text based. So all I can see is over something tyrant major in the detail. But they've like stained it with like raspberry. And this person's named Raspberry Blue Sky, so that's pretty cool. Affirmation notes for you because hashtag you matter. And so stuff like this, hashtag you matter, there's an entire you know, subculture of like a million posts of things that are beautiful and reminding you to be kind to yourself. So this is something that we're going to talk about probably in our next video. Yeah. So these pieces look like really fun. Like they look like pieces that have been like ripped up and like reassembled and then kind of like painted and drawn over top. Recent floral works, layering of vintage scrap paper, found antique postcards, acrylic, oil, pastel, crayon, marker. So this person used like a lot of different things to kind of achieve these effects. And what's really cool is that you can only get certain effects with certain things. So this crayon scribbling, like you can't really get that with other things. And it's making me think that iced latte picture was also using crayon or something oil-based. You know, and this is another example of where sketchbooks are like a really useful, beautiful tool. So they've obviously done some like painting with the pink and the gold here, and then they've gone back with maybe some markers or some, you know, like a paint pen kind of like drawn over top of it. And then this it looks like it's in Spanish, and it looks like it translates to "Don't be perfect, be authentic." So that's pretty nice. I don't know what this word says over here, but I think that's really beautiful. And so this is this technique here with the drawings. It looks like they would have started by doing like a big kind of squiggle, and then once the squiggle kind of filled the page right, then they went back and they did hatching. So this is, instead of cross hatching, this is just, you know, the line work that creates texture. So this is just regular hatching, and they would have probably done this with like pen or yeah, it looks like a pen. These are some other examples of ways in which you can use kind of like mesh. This is maybe something that you would get like at a supermarket from fruits, or, you know, or fabrics that you find at home. Like there's quite a few different fabrics going on in this. And so it looks like they've used maybe some drawing and some collage and some painting all together in this. This is probably one of my favorite pieces, and I don't know what it is about it that I just really love the edges and the cardboard and the fact that you can tell it's cardboard and you see the creases. And they've glued on some, you know, this piece of paper that looks like it's got like a little bit of like pencil crayon and like one, you know, strip of pencil here. I think I just really like the energy of this piece. Like you can see that they've like there's like a lot of energy going on here. It was fast, like it wasn't done slowly or carefully, and I really enjoy that. So, and the fact that they've, kind of combined this like square piece of cardboard with this like rectangular piece of cardboard, and now like this is a new shape. It's a weird shape. It's something that you wouldn't normally see as like a, and they might have even cut it and then just kind of shifted it and then glued it back down. So there's so much potential with cardboard because you can cut it to any shape, any size. You can really layer it. Like, it's just a really versatile material. And so I just really want to encourage you guys to use cardboard. I accidentally collected like a whole closet full of cardboard because I was so into it, and I couldn't even make as many collages as I wanted to because I just started like obsessively collecting cardboard a couple of years ago when I lived in Algonquin Park. It was my friend Joe. I remember I used to collect because we were at the art gallery, so there'd be boxes coming in and I just keep it, and it was unnecessary. It was an unnecessary amount of cardboard. So this is another one that looks like it incorporates like some kids stuff. Like, I love moi, love. Maybe this is French. Love moi. So this means like love myself or love me. Yeah, I really like this purple streak going on down here. So again, this is an example of just like the ways in which you can just kind of like layer a bunch of stuff, some scribbling textures. Yeah. This is another thing that I kind of feel like falls almost closer to under scrapbooking, because they have like lots of this like kind of Art Nouveau, like lots of butterflies, flowers, beautiful kind of antique-y looking stuff. And again, we've got some more affirmation language here. So it says, enjoy today. Yesterday's tomorrow may never come. Is that's kind of, I don't know. Tomorrow will, I'm hoping tomorrow will come. I'm pretty certain that tomorrow is going to come, but I do think that live today and make sure that you're living life to your fullest is a good message. So, hold on to those. I really like stuff that uses photographs and kind of incorporates, her hat or her head is kind of becoming this like cathedral. I really, really love uses of old photographs like that, and the signatures and kind of that pen and ink stuff going on in the background. I really like how this is layered. It's kind of quiet but interesting still. Yeah, collage journeys, paper collage. This is another example that uses like ripped paper. So they would have used like really thick, and you can see that this paper is like almost rag paper, like it's very, very thick. So when they ripped it, there's like these really thick edges and stuff like that. And so they've painted a bunch of different colors and have like this beautiful gradient kind of happening from night sky to like forest to green to like, some like beautiful pink fields happening in front here. So Kate Brazier. And so this is like a 24 by 24, so its image size is 10 by 10. So it's obviously, this is a framed image. So this is called a matte. So this like square that you see kind of cut out means that if it, in the frame, it kind of has this like nice white border before the frame happens. This is acrylic, collage, oil, pastels, and inks. So you can see that and also oil pastels have a completely different look to them than chalk pastels. Chalk pastels are very dusty, and I find challenging to work with in the sense that you kind of have to use like a spray to keep the dust down, whereas oil pastels are very thick and, rich in color, but then they're also kind of messy too, because like oil is very difficult to work with. It's difficult to clean if you get it on things. I mean, oil pastel is much easier, in my opinion, than oil paint in the sense that you can use oil pastels like crayons, whereas like oil paints you really can't, and so this is like obviously a really beautiful thing. I'm not entirely sure if they would have had to avoid the ink, like they might have had to do the ink first and then the pastel, because like you can't really put water-based things on top of oil-based things. So I think that they would have had to use their water-based media first, and then once that was down, then they would have used their oil on top of that. Yeah, really love the colors and the textures in this one. I think that it's just like very beautiful. Like it's a beautiful rainbow. Going to talk about a few more and then we're going to be kind of done here. This is something that was like used mostly with ink. So I actually asked this artist, I think I commented here, says entirely graphite. So I asked entirely graphite, did you use a 6B like watercolor to get the dark rectangle on the left? Because when I looked at this, I could really easily see how everything else was kind of made, but then this kind of looked like paint to me. And so this person actually replied and said yes, with the little AOK symbol. So it's really cool that, I had a question about this piece of work and that the artist actually did take the time to answer me back. So I really appreciate the Instagram art community for that reason. And this is a really great example of a monochrome piece because, you can do quote unquote mixed media even with just like a couple of different things. Like they've got like a little tiny piece of collage here with the ellipses and like this part of a word. But for the most part, they've used kind of like graphite in different ways. And I think it's on a sketchbook too, right? Oh yeah, it does say sketchbook scenes. So yeah, so this is something that would have been in their sketchbook. Yeah, and maybe tape together over here. Great work though, great work. Here's another example of like kind of gold leaf on textured paint. And so I just kind of wanted to share like this as an example of like a different way that you can kind of get this like ripped effect because of the way that the gold leaf went on, like where they painted it, how it dried, you know, what they did. And you can kind of rub it away. So that's kind of how you're getting this kind of like, this like rough edges to the or to the gold leaf. So they would have just kind of taken their hand or like a brush and kind of like rubbed it away and like wherever it wasn't sticky. Yeah, this is just a beautiful effect. I wanted to share an alternative way that gold leaf can be used. Here's another example with sewing and textiles. Like I personally don't sew, but I really love a lot of these. I've seen quite a lot of old photographs that are being like embroidered. This is just like a bunch of scribbling with what looks like markers. And I personally just love it. Like I love the colors. I love the scribbles. It makes me want to scribble. It makes me want to scribble and fill a whole page with it and, you know, just kind of see what I get. But super enjoyed this, wanted to share that, you know, and then this again can be used to cut up and like add to other pieces too. So like this on its own is a piece, but that it can also be added to other things. So yeah. And this is from Toby Petty, and it says, pick the best parts of you and focus there. It sounds simple, but maybe the hardest thing for lots of us to do. Unfortunately, it is easier to remember the bad stuff we've done or heard about ourselves. Alternately, when we focus on our attributes, we write ourselves as the hero in the current story. And write your story well and be your own hero. So I really like the kind of message that was like attached to this, because I think it's really easy for us to be critical of ourselves. And I think that I agree with Toby here, and that it's like really important to kind of build yourself up and like focus on the good things, you know, because everything, you know, everything's an experiment, everything's a journey, everything that we do, we're kind of building ourselves up, and the next thing that we do is going to be better. And so don't forget that. I want to talk about just a couple more here. This is another really beautiful one where they've used like masking tape and they've taped all of these things together. And you can work with tape alternatively to glue. So if you don't have white glue at home, then tape is something that you can use just as easily, just as well. And in fact, it's a lot cleaner than glue, but it doesn't hold down everything the same way. So you're going to get a little bit, you're going to get different texture going on. But that might be good for you. You know, it might be something better. So masking tape, painter's tape is green, and it is not as sticky. It's meant to not damage walls and stuff when you're painting. So painter's tape is not like a long-term solution. Masking tape is a little bit more so a long-term solution, as you can see in this art piece here. I personally use packing tape a lot of the time, and I'll laminate my stuff in packing tape, like that ambulance that we saw like a little while back. It looked like somebody had kind of laminated it with packing tape after they were done. But yeah, tape is an alternative thing that you can use instead of glue. So if you don't have glue, that's totally okay. You can even pin it or sew it the way that other people have been doing. But just so you know, glue is not the only thing that you can do with analog collage. It's just something that I find really convenient. When you're gluing things down, I find that painting it on in a big thick layer, or not too thick, you want to paint it on with a paintbrush so that it's like kind of a nice even coat. And then when you glue your stuff down, like that's how you get the best collage. Because if you just do a little squiggle of glue and then put it down, it's only going to stick where you did the squiggle. Yeah. So there's a couple of other things here I want to talk about. This person I really love. I just found them the other day. And so they do, so this person makes like these bundles. And then so you'll see that they'll get like lots of really interesting stuff out of it. They'll use fabric and paper. And then they get these beautiful textures that may have been from flower buds, like if it was like a head like Queen Anne's lace or something like that. So you get all these textures. So they'll like soak it and put their inks and stuff, and then they'll bundle it up and let it dry. And so they do nature heart journal classes. And so they actually do have a class on their stuff. So if you're interested in learning how to do this, which I'm very interested in this, then you can check out this class here. Okay, we're going to go back one more. And I personally just wanted to share a couple of these pieces. I really like the color scheme. This is definitely done on paper. Yeah, and there's definitely some paper, there's some paint, there's some pastel kind of looks like in here. And I just really like the color scheme. I like the energy. I like the pink on the black. I think it looks really great. It reminds me of like, you know, cyberpunk stuff, something cool. This person has incorporated numbers, and like it looks like they're using some printmaking techniques here, because I find numbers like that, you know, it's really difficult to make things look perfect. Typography, and by typography I mean like text. It's really difficult to make that stuff perfect. So I feel like, you know, using stencils is the way to go there. This is another person who's had their face kind of like broken up, where so they've been you know, their identity has been obscured. And again, it kind of comes back to that mystery where it's like, we want to know what they look like. I really love the texture of like this peach kind of gold pink stuff happening on the, with the paint over here. It looks like it's Cyrillic, like this is the Russian alphabet. So this is really cool. I love seeing different type of texts used in the background and stuff. There's like a barcode going on here. I personally really love the kind of ransom script, which is, I call it ransom script maybe. I'm gonna look up ransom note. Yeah, so this is like classic paper cut, you know, back in the day. I don't know where the ransom note idea kind of originated from. Give us the stamps and nobody gets hurt, X. Like, you know, so I love that kind of like cut and paste text stuff. And so that's kind of like what this person is like using as their signature down here. I really love this. This is definitely one of my favorite pieces. So yeah, you can use images, but you don't have to. I really like the texture that they've kind of got going on here. We've got a lot of energy, lots of paint, lots of layering kind of happening on this page. This is an unstretched canvas. You can see that like it was a canvas that used to be on stretches that they've kind of taken it off. And it also looks unprimed. And it's called I Am Hugely Overrated. It's a great piece. Love this. 10 on 10. This is another one that I just really like the texture. I like the green and the black and the white. It's kind of messy, but yeah, lots of build up here. Abstract. It says, this one is Colorfield Art. It says it's sold. It looks pretty big, 24 by 30. So this is like a poster size, 24 by 36 maybe. Anyways, this is another beautiful one that was kind of done with what looks like markers. It says this was a panel. Was updated from a previous version from a show before at Austin at Yard Dog. Yeah, so this is wood panel mixed media, so it looks like that they might have painted the sky and then gone back and kind of drawn the smoke and the geometry. You know, and maybe this down here looks like it could have been marker on paper that was maybe collaged down. So there's like lots of different effects that you guys can get. So I hope that this was like helpful for you guys to kind of like look at the different things. I really liked the color scheme in this, with the paint and the black and the rainbow. It's just so gorgeous with the teal and the pink and the purple and the blue. Like this is one of those color schemes that I really like. And I also love like white on black. So I just really like a lot of what's going on here. Even the strange flower child face I like. Normally that would kind of disturb me, but I really enjoy that. And this person is actually commentating. Art by Marlene is commentating on, you know what I love about creating? I love it that the sky is the limit. You can combine products, media, paper, stamps, paints, pencils, and more. So for example, this piece, created on one of my tab tags, I used a new stamp from my Go Dutch collection, combined it with a die cut. So I feel like this was a typo. So a die cut is just like essentially like a perfect cutout and a sticker, and stuck it down on a bright painterly background. And it's beautiful. Like I love this piece here. So yeah, the sky is the limit, and don't forget that. Yeah, so I think that that's mostly it for, you know, for mixed media stuff. I skipped a couple of these here, partially because I want to talk about them in the next video. I hope that this was helpful for you guys. I'm going to be doing a demo on collaging a gift box. So I got a gift box in the mail, so we're going to kind of look at how we can create, how we can create like beautiful packaging for a gift. And actually, you guys are going to get to see a little later on what's in the box too. So you're going to get to see the collage, and then you're going to get to see the surprise, beautiful thing that's inside of it too. Yeah, you can use collage for a lot of different things. And the sky is the limit. So I'm really looking forward to the next video to sharing with you guys, you know, all the possibilities of things that we can do with a couple of different household objects.